Rise and resist words no longer suffice in response to the massacre of hundreds of Palestinian civilians by Israeli forces at the Jabalia refugee camp in Gaza, a notably famous front with redhead bands called for large-scale rebellion. This front differs from most in Palestine. It is not a part of the Islamic Front. This front is also not as large as Hamas or Fatah. However, they are not new players in the Palestinian resistance movement, in the Palestinian liberation movement. This organization is one of the influential ones. Its actions marked a change in direction in the methods and tactics of the Palestinian liberation struggle during the 1960s and 1970s to garner world attention and rally solidarity against the occupation by Israel. According to them, the only way to achieve Palestinian freedom is through armed struggle even before the establishment of Hamas. This organization was known as the most radical in the Palestinian liberation movement. They are the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, or PFP. The PFLP grew from the Arab nationalist movement, A&M, which was founded in 1953. Its founder was George Habash, a Palestinian Christian from L&M, was established embracing the nationalist spirit. From C.H. Gara's view of the revolutionary human A&M, then formed underground branches in several Arab countries, including Libya, Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait. Habash adopted ideas of secularism and socialist economics and promoted armed struggle after the Arab defeat in the Six-Day War in June 1967. A&M joined forces with two other groups, Youth for Revenge and the Palestine Liberation Front, led by Ahmed Gibril, supported by Syria. Habash then chose to form a new organization and merge the Arab nationalist movement into a more radical and militant movement, the PFLP, on December 11, 1967. Technically, this organization is Marxist-Leninist. At the beginning of 1968, the PFLP had already trained about 3,000 guerrillas and quickly became the second largest faction in the Palestine Liberation Organization, after Fatah. Both the PFLP and Fatah, led by Yasser Arafat, were part of the PLO. However, there were significant ideological differences between Habash and Arafat. In their operations, the PFLP firmly refused to recognize the State of Israel and opposed negotiations with the Israeli government, while F was more ambiguous and supported a one-state solution to the Israel-Palestine conflict. Eventually, the PFLP decided to leave the PLO committee, which by then was dominant by Fatah. Since then, the two organizations have often competed in leading the Palestinian struggle. So how did this organization expand its power from its inception? The PFLP sought patronage from superpowers and continuously developed relationships with the Soviet Union, the People's Republic of China, and regional powers like Syria, South Yemen, Libya, North Korea, and Iraq. What are the beliefs of the PFLP? Like all militias in Palestine, they desire a unified Palestine, as it was before the British Mandate of 1947. As mentioned earlier, the PFLP vastly differs from Fatah, both factions of the Palestine Liberation Organization, in their vision of how to achieve Palestinian independence and how to interact with Western countries. According to the PFLP, a major and fatal mistake of Fatah was to detach the Palestinian struggle from the wider Arab nationalist struggle. The PFLP considered Fatah a traitor for making peace agreements with Israel. The PP's ideology combines Arab nationalism with Marxist-Leninist ideology and sees the destruction of Israel as an integral part of its struggle to eliminate Western capitalism from the Middle East. Following the First INAPA and the Oslo Accords, the PFLP faced challenges in branding their organization in the West Bank and Gaza Strip. The dissolution of the Soviet Union and the rise of Islamism led to a rapid increase in the popularity of Islamic groups like Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Palestine. As a result, the PP's role in the Palestinian struggle became marginalized. In response, the PFP was forced to gradually adapt from its Marxist orientation to strengthen its position after the 1993 Oslo peace agreement. The PFLP extended support to different Palestinian organizations opposing the agreement. Politically, the PFLP has a strong presence in the Rala area, the Eastern District, and the outskirts of Jerusalem and Bethlehem, which have a predominantly Christian population. Besides Palestinian organizations, the PFLP also developed contacts with Islamic fundamentalist groups associated with Iran, including Palestinian Hamas and Hezbollah. This meant a difficult choice as it further distanced the PFLP from its Marxist orientation despite relationships with Fatah and Hamas. The PFLP fundamentally considers the Fatah government in the West Bank and the Hamas government in the Gaza Strip as illegitimate, citing the lack of Palestinian National Authority elections since 2006. During the PP's 6th National Conference in 2000, Habash stepped down as Secretary General, and soon after he passed away, his role was taken over by Abu Ali Mustafa. Tragically, just a year into his tenure, Abu Ali Mustafa was killed when an Israeli helicopter fired rockets at his office in the city of Ramallah, West Bank. After Mustafa's death, leadership passed to Imad Saadat. However, his leadership was short-lived after being accused by Israel of orchestrating the murder of Israeli tourism minister and right-wing party leader in Jerusalem, Rav Zevi. During Habash, leadership, the PFLP was notorious for its controversial actions such as hijacking planes, assassinating diplomats, and deadly attacks on Israeli and Western assets. The PFLP was even involved in the Yom Kippur War in 1973. The PFLP had a paramilitary wing, known as the Popular Resistance Forces, under Habash. His leadership, this military wing orchestrated several rebellious actions, such as airplane hijackings, throughout the 1970s. The group fostered relationships with militant groups worldwide, including Germany's BM Hof Group and the Japanese Red Army. Why did the PFLP often resort to hijacking planes? The SE this was seen as a significant way to draw attention to their movement. Not just one, but 4 airplanes were hijacked simultaneously in September 1970. However, among the airplane hijackings conducted by the PFLP, the most famous was the Inbi incident in Uganda in 1976. During this event, the PFLP's paramilitary wing hijacked an Air France plane. However, this hijacking was thwarted by the Israeli military, rescuing about 100 hostages. Habash frequently faced terror threats and assassination attempts, but always managed to survive. Eventually, the PFLP announced the cessation of airplane hijacking tactics in its movement, leading to political divisions within the PFLP under the leadership of Saadat. The military wing was renamed the Ali Mustafa Brigades and frequently launched attacks against Israeli targets, including several suicide bombings. During the Second Palestinian Intifada, this military wing carried out 5 suicide bombing actions. In recent years, the group has been primarily involved in launching rocket and mortar attacks from the Gaza Strip into southern Israeli communities and carrying out bombings, explosive attacks, and shootings. They have also claimed responsibility for several attacks targeting Israeli forces patrolling the Gaza border. Regrettably, this organization, which initially strongly opposed negotiations with Israel and called for liberation, began to weaken in the 2000s during their National Congress. The group stated that they accepted the Oslo Accords previously, They had even advocated for the establishment of a Palestinian state with Jerusalem as its capital. This included withdrawing troops to the borders, dismantling Jewish settlements in occupied territories, and the right of return for Palestinian citizens. The current situation with the development of so many factions complicates efforts to stabilize Gaza. Without a united Palestine, the balance of power with Israel cannot be shifted in favor of a fair peace and the creation of an independent Palestinian state. Acknowledging this reality since 2022, the PFLP, along with Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, have taken steps together to form a national liberation front to overcome internal divisions and collaborate to rebuild the PLO, which is currently perceived as weakening.